There is a huge group of people at work behind our screens. They're called behaviour architects, persuasive designers, or user experience specialists. And the power they have is massive. That urge to keep swiping through your Twitter feed, that's design. The way we all click, I agree to the terms and conditions, that's design. Swiping left or right on Tinder, that's design too. We live in an online world of someone else's making, and most of us never even give it a second thought. And actually, that's design as well.
San Francisco, it's the mecca for tech designers. Home to Silicon Valley, this place pioneered the art of constructing, optimising and enhancing a lot of the technology we use every day. It's turbocharged the speed at which we use the internet and made navigating the web more intuitive, but it's also given us a false sense of security.
I've lost count of the number of times I've clicked "I agree" to get into a website. We all have to do it. As we speed around the internet, we face hundreds of these annoying pop-ups and consent forms, all demanding a response from us. And yes, I call them annoying because that is exactly what they are. They may look like that they're there to provide us with control, but the reality is far from it.
When users click on "I agree to the terms and conditions," or they see a privacy policy and they click on it, they may think that they're actually being given control of their personal data, what's collected, how it's used. And it's advantageous to companies for them to do that, because if something bad happens, the tech company can then say, "You actually agreed to this." Nobody ever reads the terms of service. No one should ever be expected to. If we actually tried to read every terms and conditions agreement that we came across, it's probably the only thing we would do. It would have to be our day job, because they're so long and we come into so many. It may have the veneer of giving control to data subjects, but ultimately it's window dressing.
Woody Hartzog is what you'd call a scholar of design. He's been studying the psychology, ethics and legal implications of new technologies. One area he specialises in is data protection and privacy. Now, before we get into this, there's a key term you need to know: informed consent. This is a principle that comes up a lot in discussions of our rights online, but it's easier to explain in the context of medical surgery. A doctor explains potential risks and worst-case scenarios to you, the patient. Once you're fully informed, you have the option to consent to surgery or not. In the online world, though, informed consent is what everyone says is the ideal. But is that even possible?
Consent only works under a very narrow set of conditions, and that's when the decision is infrequent, like with surgery, so we don't have surgery all the time. It's when the risks are visceral. There are things that we can easily conjure up in our minds. And then finally, the harm is possibly great. So if things go wrong with surgery, you could get sick or you could die. So we've got an incredible incentive to take that decision seriously. But of course, none of those things are present in the data ecosystem. We make the decisions quite frequently, 10, 100 times a day. The harms are not visceral at all. They're incredibly opaque. And finally, the harm is not even that great, because the modern privacy harms aren't huge. They're death by 1,000 cuts.
The spin from Silicon Valley is that they're on our side when it comes to how we control our data.
Long privacy policies are very confusing, and if you make it long and spell out all the detail, then you're probably going to reduce the percent of people who read it.
However, take a closer look at the design of the buttons and the pop-ups that we're made to click, and it's clear that the tech companies have the upper hand in the data battle.
Design is power, and every single design decision makes a certain reality more or less likely. And what tech companies and psychologists and other people have known for years is that defaults are notoriously sticky. And so if you design the interface so that all the defaults are set to maximize exposure, then you're going to get a lot more data in the aggregate than you would if you set all the defaults to privacy protective, because people don't go in and change them. So until we fundamentally change the incentives, we're still going to see companies manipulating the design of these buttons and these technologies to ensure that you still keep disclosing data and that they still keep getting what's the lifeblood of their business.
Most of us assume that when we go on a website and click that I agree button, the site simply collects information that we voluntarily choose to share. In reality, there are many layers to data collection, and the mechanics of it are invisible, hidden by design. For starters, it isn't just the website you are on that's mining information. There are so-called third parties, advertisers, marketers, and analytics agencies also tracking you. Using tiny bits of software, cookies, beacons, pixel tags, they scoop up incredibly detailed information. Everything from what computer you're using to how long you hover over a link. Honestly, it's a bit mind-boggling. And all you really did was click a button. Once you've crossed the I agree hurdle, you're now in the clutches of the website. And this is where design takes on a whole new level of importance. The job is to keep you there.
One of the most successful innovations in mobile and website design is something called infinite scroll. You know it, we all use it every single day. It's the ability to scroll endlessly through your feeds without ever needing to click. I'm on my way now to meet the creator of this function. His name is Aza Raskin. Now, he no longer works inside big tech corporations. In early 2018, he co-founded the Center for Humane Technology.
All of our apps, all of Silicon Valley companies are competing for our attention. And because it's such a cutthroat game of trying to get our attention, worth tens of billions of dollars, they have to increasingly point more powerful computers at our heads to try to frack us for that attention. I think we've all had that experience of like going to YouTube and you think, I'm just gonna watch one video, and then like somehow like you shake your head and an hour has passed, and like how is it that technology has hypnotized us?
This tech hypnotization is key to what's called the attention economy. Our attention is a finite currency in the online world, and it's only as long as websites and apps have our attention that they have our business and our data. A few years ago, YouTube set a company-wide objective to reach 1 billion hours of viewing a day. Netflix creator Reed Hastings has also said multiple times that the company's biggest competitor isn't another website, it's sleep. So what happens when you give algorithms the goal of maximizing our attention and time online? They find our weaknesses and exploit them. In 2017, Sean Parker, a founding member of Facebook and its first president, literally confessed to this at an event.
How do we consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible? And that means that we need to sort of give you a little dopamine hit every once in a while because someone liked or commented on a photo or a post or whatever. And that's going to get you to contribute more content. It's a social validation feedback loop that it's like it's exactly the kind of thing that a hacker like myself would come up with, because you're exploiting a vulnerability in human psychology.
Now, it's not as though Silicon Valley pioneered the tricks and tactics of addiction or persuasive design. Many tech designers openly admit using insights from behavioural scientists of the early 20th century, like the concept of randomly scheduled rewards, studied and developed by American psychologist B.F. Skinner in the 1950s. He created what's become known as the Skinner box, a simple contraption he used to study pigeons and even rats. At the start of the process, a pigeon is given a food reward every time it pecks the word peck, or turns a full circle when the word turn appears. As the experiment proceeds, the rewards become less frequent. They take place at random. But by that time, the behaviour has been established. The pigeon keeps pecking or turning, not knowing when it might get the reward, but in anticipation that a reward could be coming. Skinner boxes were pivotal in demonstrating how design had the power to modify behaviour. And if randomly scheduled rewards worked for pigeons, why not humans? Skinner's concept is in fact at the heart of a lot of addictive design, from casino machines such as slot machines to social media apps.
Smartphones are unnervingly similar to slot machines. Think about your Facebook, Instagram or Pinterest feeds. We all swipe down, pause, and then wait to see what will appear. We're back to those randomly scheduled rewards again. Your swipe could result in a new comment on a photo, a new like, or a piece of spam or software update. We don't really know, and it's that unpredictability that makes it so addictive.
Natasha Dow Schüll is a cultural anthropologist who has spent more than 15 years studying the algorithms behind persuasive design.
Just like on a slot machine, when you're texting or when you are looking through the news feed, you really never know what's coming down the pike. You never know when you're going to sort of hit that jackpot, so to speak, and when it's coming and how much it'll be. So the randomness is very important to keep you hooked in. I think the fact that we're gambling money in a casino isn't really that different than what we're doing, because in both cases, what we're really gambling is our attention and our time, right? And across the board, we're sitting there sort of hoping for some little reward to come, never knowing when it's going to come. In all cases, we're sort of sitting alone with the machine. There's no natural stopping point. I think that the similarities are quite striking.
We check our phones over 150 times a day, right? Just like pull it up, pull it up, pull it up. It's the first thing we look at when we wake up. The last thing we look at before we go to sleep. It's like we're glued to it, and that's by design. We now have like over 2 billion Skinner boxes in people's pockets. We are running the largest experiment, like psychological experiment, that the world has ever seen by orders of magnitude, right? 1 out of every 4 human beings on Earth has a Skinner box, which is learning how to uniquely target them. Super fascinating in the abstract, but sort of terrifying when you think about what it's doing.
There's such emphasis put on free choice and being able to be a consumer, and you make decisions in the marketplace about what you want to do because you have free will. But at the same time, the very people who are promoting that notion of the person as a consumer sovereign are operating and designing their technology with a very different human subject in mind. It's somebody who can, like a rat or a pigeon or any other animal, be incentivized and motivated and hooked in and have their attention redirected. And that's really interesting to me because it is a kind of return to Skinner. I think you wouldn't have heard that in the 80s or 90s. That would have even been creepy to think about someone designing your behavior. But now it's become accepted that you can be a behavior designer.
And behaviour design was one part of what Aza used to do in a previous life. However, he is now one of a growing number of industry insiders who are taking a more critical stance towards these silicon giants. Talking to him left me wondering, does he regret his part in inventing infinite scroll?
I want to be like humble about it. If I hadn't invented it, it would have been invented. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time, thinking about the right kind of thing. But yes, I do regret it. But I do think it talks to like the naivety of being like, oh, here's just like a cool feature, and making it. And even if it's great for the individual user, without thinking about the effects that'll happen if you can scale it up to 100 million people or 1 billion people, where this little thing that I went around to like Twitter and Google and all these other companies, they're like, guys, you should adopt this, now has wasted quite literally hundreds of millions of human hours.
I'm sure all of us have had someone or another say to us, stop looking at your phone, or why are you so addicted to social media? And before I started this series, I thought maybe there is something wrong with me. I just had no idea how deliberately designed our online experience is, and how these design algorithms are made to pull us in and form habits. I asked everyone I spoke to, how do we change this? Can we change how online design works?
Regulation cannot be expected to happen on its own within these corporations, right, who are profiting from this, because there's just too deep of a conflict of interest. And so the only viable kind of regulation is going to have to come from the outside. We have to have a public conversation about what is actually going on in these products, how are they working, and once we understand that as a collective, what do we want to limit and constrain?
So if you start with the assumption that people are never going to fully understand the risks of algorithms and the way in which that interacts with data, then we have to think about what else might work in its place. And the data protection regimes like the General Data Protection Regulation are a great foundation. And one of the ways in which we could really improve upon that is to embrace a trust-based model. So instead of putting all the risk on the user, the requirement of protecting people would fall on the company that's using the algorithms, that's using the data.
I think there is going to be a huge shift from just human-centered design, as we call it in our field, which is like put the human at the center, which was a big movement, to thinking about human protective design, where we say that the tools that we're building are so powerful that they cause real damage to us individually, to our mental health, to our relationships, to our children, and to us societally, to our democracies, to having like civil discourse. And that move to human protective design, or humane design, I think is super hopeful, because then we could actually have technology which does what it was supposed to in the first place, which is extend our best selves.
Thanks for watching the 5th and final episode in our All Hail the Algorithm series. If you're interested in the other episodes and you haven't seen them yet, you can easily go to our website aljazeera.com/allhailthealgorithm, or use the hashtag allhailthealgorithm on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and you'll easily see all the content that's available there. So I hope you enjoyed the series. I know I learned a lot putting it together, and leave us a comment, because we're also interested in knowing how algorithms might be affecting your life, and there are plenty of examples that we weren't able to include in this series. So thank you again, and hope to see you soon.